Teal eyes.
Have you ever heard someone claim that they were born at the wrong time or in the wrong generation? That they are an old soul who was really meant to be a flower child of the 1960s or a well-to-do socialite of the 1920s? Well, I have to confess that I myself am one of these people. I know for a fact that I was born in the wrong time. How, you ask? Well, because by the time I was born, I had already permanently missed my one true calling in life: steamrolling the competition on the 1993 to 1995 Nickelodeon game show, Legends of the Hidden Temple. Legends was one of many game shows developed by Nickelodeon in the 1980s and 90s, in which children would compete against each other for both fortune and glory. We're talking stuff like Global Guts, Nick Arcade, Finders Keepers, and Double Dare. I was born years after all of these shows had come and gone, but I later discovered them airing in syndication on the cable TV channel Nick Gas. Operating from 1999 to 2007, Nick Gas was a bizarre gem of a cable channel. It played non-stop reruns of the same 7 shows, with only occasional deviations for special programming blocks. There were no commercials on the channel, but rather original short interstitials. These ran the gamut from straightforward sports tips from professionals to surreal, almost Adult Swim-style shorts. I liked everything about Nick Gas, but each time I turned it on, I was really just hoping to see Legends of the Hidden Temple. While the gameplay at the core of Legends of the Hidden Temple was pretty comparable to most other Nick game shows, it had something that set it apart from the pack.
Theming.
Legends had a historical Indiana Jones-style aesthetic, and every episode was centered around, well, a legend. In this case, a story told by the show's mascot, Olmec. Each legend detailed a famous object from history that the winning team would later attempt to locate in the titular temple. This brings us to the subject at the core of this video: the 6 teams that compete in every episode.
Will it be the Red Jaguars, the Blue Barracudas, the Green Monkeys, the Orange Iguanas, the Purple Parrots, or the Silver Snakes?
Despite the only differentiating factors amongst the teams being their colors and names, just about everyone who watches this show inevitably finds themselves arbitrarily picking a favorite team to which they apply their rooting interest. Whether you play it safe and support the Red Jaguars, or you're a stone-cold madman who's pledged their loyalty to the Silver Snakes, we've all got our own individual favorite. But which team was actually statistically the best? This video will answer exactly that. Using a variety of metrics, I'll rank the teams in order of overall success, while also covering some interesting individual case studies along the way. Tales of athletic heroism and prowess, gut-wrenching and game-changing mistakes, and the stories of the greatest temple runs ever seen.
Let's rock.
Before we get into the stats and rankings, here's a breakdown of the structure of Legends of the Hidden Temple for those who are less familiar. The show is divided into 4 stages: the moat, the steps of knowledge, the temple games, and finally Olmec's temple. I'll be getting deeper into the mechanics of each stage as the video progresses, but for now, here's the basics of each one. At the start of every episode, all 6 teams would attempt to cross the moat, which is really just a fogged out swimming pool, in one of a variety of ways. These methods included, but were not limited to, tight ropes, lily pads, rafts, nets, floating rings, and pretty much whatever they could find laying around. The first 4 teams to reach the other side and hit their button would advance to the steps of knowledge. At this point, the teams would listen as Olmec told the story behind the episode's legend. You know, all the classics from history class. You got the golden goblet of Attila the Hun, the belly button of Buddha, the levitating dog leash of Nostradamus, and who could forget the dried apple half of William Tell?
What the fuck?
After the story, the teams were then asked questions concerning the finer details of what they had just heard. 3 correct answers from a team earned them one of 2 spots in the Temple Games. The Temple Games consisted of a wide variety of head-to-head competitions that would test the players' physical attributes. During the games, the teams compete for pendants of life, which are effectively extra lives for the temple run. The first 2 rounds of the games were worth half a pendant, while the final round would net the winners a full pendant. Whichever team had more pendants at the end of the 3rd round would advance to Olmec's temple. In the event of a tiebreaker round would be held in which a single trivia question would be asked. The stakes don't get any bigger. Loser goes home, winner gets a chance at perhaps the greatest form of childhood glory: a shot at the temple. Let's be honest, the temple is the reason you watch the show in the first place. Sure, the other rounds were nice, but we all know Legends of the Hidden Temple fans only want one thing, and in true 90s fashion, it's sick. Olmec's temple was a 12-room gauntlet, with each room featuring a different puzzle or task for the contestant to complete before moving on. The temple was also outfitted with guards, which, if encountered, would end a contestant's run unless that contestant was in possession of a pendant of life. If a team only managed to win 1.5 pendants of life during the temple games, the other half pendant was then hidden in the temple and, if found, would give the team another chance to survive an encounter with a temple guard. The ultimate goal of the temple run was to retrieve the episode's artifact, which was hidden somewhere in the temple, and make it back to the gate before time runs out. This is the type of stuff we used to dream about as kids. I mean, it's your very own adventure movie. Could you imagine the emotions, the sheer adrenaline one must feel as Olmec lowers the gate and Kirk Fogg puts 3 minutes on the clock? No, you can't. None of us can. Only those lucky few who stood here, at the edge of the eternal ecstasy of temple glory and the life-altering shadow of televised defeat, will ever truly know what that rush felt like. I'll be using stats from all 4 stages for these rankings. However, stats from temple runs, including how many times a team got to the temple in the first place, percentage of runs in which the team secured the artifact, overall win percentage, and others will be weighted slightly higher than stats from the 3 other stages. Also, because the episodes initially aired out of sequence, I'll be using the order in which the episodes completed filming rather than the broadcast order when referring to episode numbers. So now that we are all at least somewhat familiar with how the game is played, it's time to find out which team played it best. But before we do that, let's start at the very bottom with the team that holds the dubious honor of being the least successful team in the show's history.
The Purple Parrots!
It was inevitable, really. We all knew this was coming. The Purple Parrots being the worst is a tale as old as time. Let's start at the moat. The Parrots posted the second lowest moat success rate, with the team placing in the top 4 58% of the time, just 1% higher than the one team with the worst moat record.
Oh! You know, if I had wings, I'd have made it.
Okay, so not good, but not the worst so far. And when the Parrots did manage to progress to the Steps of Knowledge, they usually made the most of the opportunity. In 70 appearances at the Steps, the Parrots advanced 38 times, giving them a win percentage of 54%, which ties them for second for the stage. Most of these advancements came in impressive fashion too, as the Parrots were the first team to finish in 24 of their 38 step successes. However, this strong showing at the Steps of Knowledge is really the only thing Purple Parrots fans can cling to, because it's all downhill from here. If you think of the Temple Games as being the show's equivalent of the playoffs in professional sports, then the Purple Parrots would be like the NHL's Florida Panthers over the past few decades. They don't make the playoffs very often, and when they do, they usually get smacked around. The Parrots have the worst win percentage in the Temple Games, going 60-54, with the show counting ties as a win for both teams. This record earned the Parrots a total of 39.5 pendants, yet another category in which the Parrots bring up the rear. Sure, their total of 114 games played is higher than the totals of a few other teams, but that doesn't count for much if those extra appearances just led to more L's. The Parrots are easily the least clutch team in Legends history, as they went an embarrassing 1-7 in tiebreakers. With just a 13% win percentage, the Parrots are in a distant 6th place in this category. In fact, the Purple Parrots were winless in tiebreakers until episode 109, when they finally broke their sudden death losing streak.
That is correct.
But it's the dismal Temple Run stats that really cement the Purple Parrots as the last place Legends team. Technically, the Parrots do have the 3rd best completion percentage on temple runs, but that stat can be a little misleading when you consider that they only made it to the temple 11 times, and completed just 3 of those runs. That total of 3 wins is, surprise surprise, the fewest managed by any of the 6 teams, and just 11 temple appearances isn't even close to enough for anything above last place. It took a while before the Parrots finally brought the grand prize home, as their first successful temple run wouldn't occur until Season 2. In the 71st episode. For context, the second longest drought before a team completed their first temple run was 41 episodes. This definitive last place showing at the temple shatters any chance the Parrots had of making an argument for 5th place. And beyond that, the Parrots don't really have an individual story that sticks out as being worth including here. Instead, we're left with a purple-tinted montage full of failures and disappointments, with just a few bright spots sprinkled in. The life of a Purple Parrots fan is one of pain, despair, and little else. These fans know their team usually can't even make it across the width of a swimming pool. They know that the Parrots will only win the grand prize in 1 out of every 40 episodes. And yet, they still cheer for the birds, a fan base that anyone can respect. The same cannot be said for the team that ranks 5th.
The Red Jaguars!
For some reason, the Red Jaguars have a reputation as being a powerhouse amongst the Legends teams, and fans of the Jaguars are often quick to bring this up. This, however, is a misconception, as the Red Jaguars are actually the 5th most successful team in the show's history when accounting for all 4 phases of the game. With all due respect, the Jags are unquestionably the masters of the moat. Across the show's 120 episodes, the Red Jaguars advanced from the moat a staggering 90 times, for a success rate of 75%, which puts them firmly in first place for this stat. They established themselves as
The moat goats.
in Season 1, and they never looked back. In the first season of Legends, the Red Jaguars posted a moat record of 33-7, with 12 of those being first place finishes. This includes the Jaguars pulling off one of the biggest blowouts the moat ever saw on their way to the temple run for Blackbeard's treasure map. If water traversal was the Jaguars' strong suit, then listening comprehension was definitely their Achilles heel. Of the 90 Jaguar duos that progressed past the moat, 50 were sent packing at the Steps of Knowledge, leaving them with a last place success rate of 44%. Just brutal. Due to their sheer number of appearances at the steps, the uncultured / hard of hearing Jags were still able to advance 40 times, which in turn allowed them to compete in 120 temple games. And then they went 65-55 for a win percentage of 54%, just 1% higher than the basement-dwelling Purple Parrots. I mean, what happened? Clearly the skills shown at the moat should transfer to the games, right? The answer is mental mistakes. Those few Galaxy Brain Jaguars that did make it past the Steps of Knowledge were clearly psychologically exhausted from the experience. There's no other explanation for such a sharp drop-off. Even with all of those losses, the Red Jaguars still managed to stumble into 20 temple appearances. How many of those runs were successful, you ask? 4, tied for the second fewest amongst all 6 teams. The Jags completed 1 out of every 5 of their temple runs, which gives them the 5th best temple run win rate, and definitively locks them in at 5th overall in the rankings. Now, time for some controversy. Technically, and I do stress technically, the Red Jaguars hold the record for the fastest ever completed temple run, that being for their episode 28 retrieval of the Mask of Shaka Zulu with 1 minute and 14 seconds still on the clock.
That's not exactly true.
There needs to be a serious asterisk next to that record, and to understand why, we're going to need to take a closer look at the mechanics of Olmec's Temple. Olmec's Temple was comprised of 12 areas, however, the contents of these areas changed from episode to episode. The show used 15 different layouts for the temple, with each one being comprised of a different combination of 44 possible rooms. Most rooms contained multiple doorways, some of which were unlocked, some that could be unlocked by completing the room-specific task, and a select few that were always locked. These dead ends are an essential part of any temple run, as they often block off direct paths to the artifact, which ensured that the runners would have to traverse a larger portion of the temple. The Mask of Shaka Zulu makes use of temple layout number 7. For starters, it's not as if layout 7 was any easier to complete than the rest of the bunch. In fact, this was the only victory to come from this particular layout. And Shaka Zulu's mask was located in the Tomb of the Ancient King, which in this layout occupied Area 9. Here. So how then was the record broken, and more importantly, why should there be an asterisk next to that record? Well, let's take a look at the run. You can't talk about the Mask of Shaka Zulu run without talking about its hero.
What's your name?
Bobby.
Here's a couple things you need to know about Bobby. First, this kid is absolutely nails. This is perhaps the biggest moment of his life, and look, Bobby doesn't care. For him, the temple is just another task that needs to be completed. And second, Bobby wants it all. He won't settle for anything less than the top.
Be rich.
Be rich? What do you want to do?
Doctor or lawyer.
But don't get it twisted, he's not a soulless capitalist either.
Well, would you be a surgeon?
I'd work on the heart.
Wow, that's pretty heavy.
And the last thing you gotta know is that Bobby is a man with a plan.
What's your strategy? How are you going to get there?
Well, I'm going to keep as low as I can. I'm going to go to the squirrel run, and try to go to the throne. And then if the door is locked, I'm going to go up to the heart room and then try to go across and then go down.
Knowing that the mask was at the back of the temple and on the bottom level, Bobby devised a plan that was simple, yet brilliant. Stay on the bottom level and go straight for as long as possible. Anticipating a permanently locked door somewhere along the way, Bobby planned to go up into the heart room in the event that his progress was stymied. A solid plan. One so intricate that host Kirk Fogg could hardly comprehend it.
Just gonna try to go whatever way the path will lead you. All right, let's see if that works.
At the start of the run, Bobby sticks with his plan and enters the lower level of the temple via the Cave of Sighs. A temple guard immediately pops out and Bobby is forced to surrender his Pendant of Life. As expected, Bobby is completely unfazed. He makes short work of the wheel room and the throne of the Pretender, a room in which the task is literally just sitting down. He then progresses through the holes of Python and, right into the Tomb of the Forgotten King, where Bobby snatches up the mask and turns to head back out. I haven't mentioned it up to this point, but if a player reaches the artifact during a temple run, all of the temple's doors unlock and the temple guards vanish. With a clear path back to the entrance, Bobby flies through the temple, taking the same straight path that he used on the way in, and he makes it back to the gate with a flat-out ludicrous amount of time still on the clock. Simply put, Bobby made it look easy. But maybe it was too easy. It turns out that the reason Bobby was able to go straight to the artifact without ever having to change course was because production forgot to permanently lock some of the temple doors for this run, a failure that was easily exploited by Bobby's patented go-straight strategy. Even the notoriously unobservant Kirk Fogg realized something was wrong when Bobby was able to go directly from the holes of the Python to the mask's location.
Well, I guess he's gonna have to go up. No, that's gonna lead him in.
So, while this is technically the fastest run in the show's history, it really shouldn't count. Sorry, Jags fans. As for Bobby, he probably couldn't care less. I'm sure he didn't lose any sleep over it while he was on his grand prize trip to
Puerto Rico!
I guess it makes sense that the Red Jaguars would be the team to have the tainted record for the fastest temple run. It fits them perfectly. Pretenders that appear more successful on the surface than they really are. The Jags' rightful place is here, in 5th. While 5th and 6th were pretty cut and dry, it's a thin line that separates the 3rd and 4th place teams. And so, by a narrow margin, the 4th best Legends of the Hidden Temple team is the Blue Barracudas.
The Blue Barracudas!
The Blue Barracudas are your quintessential middle-of-the-road team. For that reason, there are very few Barracudas fans. While sightings are few and far between, legend has it that these fans do in fact exist. The Blue Barracudas can often feel anonymous, mere passengers on the Hidden Temple train, and their stats tend to back this up as the Barracudas don't stand out in most categories. They're the 3rd best moat team with a record of 76-44 for a win percentage of 63%. And to go along with that, they are right smack in the middle of the pack for the Steps of Knowledge too, as they posted a 4th place win percentage of 49%, with an overall record of 37-39. However, an overall strong showing in the Temple games differentiates the Barracudas from the teams below them. 111 games played is admittedly not a lot, but the Barracudas managed to make the most of those appearances. By win percentage, the Blue Barracudas were the 2nd most successful team in the Temple games, with a rather impressive 62% of their efforts resulting in a win. All those wins brought in a haul of 44.5 pendants and 19 trips to the temple. At the temple, the Barracudas returned to their true selves by putting up distinctly mediocre stats. Duos in blue won the grand prize 5 times, earning them the bronze medal for the category of temple wins. That leaves 14 failed runs, which gives the Barracudas a win rate of 26%, 4th best in the category. These definitively ho-hum temple stats fit right in with the Barracudas' numbers from the moat and the steps, and prove that despite their impressive display in the temple games, they ultimately belong here in 4th place. The Barracudas also do have to take a small hit for holding the record for longest drought between temple runs, as they went 28 straight episodes without an appearance at the temple in late Season 2 into early Season 3. As far as I can tell, the Blue Barracudas are also the only team to ever drop a Pendant of Life during a temple run. That gives Maggie here the distinguished honor of being the only runner to ever be removed from the temple via an encounter with the first temple guard. A peculiar blip in Legends history that could only come from a run involving the Barracudas. For the record, the run would go on to end with the infamous
Triple seizure.
a term used to describe failed runs in which all 3 guards are encountered. Only 14 such runs occurred across all 120 episodes. With that said, let's move on to the team that just narrowly beat out the Barracudas for a place at the podium.
The Orange Iguanas!
The Orange Iguanas are the hipsters team. If you're an Orange Iguanas fan, then there's a pretty good chance you aren't learning anything from this video. You already know all of these stats, and that's why you chose the Iguanas in the first place. You don't want to be the guy that just picks the objectively best team, so instead you chose a team that specialized in and completely ran one phase of the game. They were 5th best at the moat, but that gets balanced out by a joint 2nd best showing at the steps. Blah blah blah, none of that matters when you're talking Iguanas. Because when it comes to the Iguanas, if we're not talking Temple games, then I don't want to talk. The Orange Iguanas straight up owned the Temple games. In 111 games played, the Iguanas showed out and went 75-36 for a win percentage of 68%, far and away the best team in the category. The Iguanas were dominant in the Temple games to the point where there were only 3 episodes in which another team defeated them without needing to go to a tiebreaker. If they made it to the games, the Iguanas almost always went to the Temple. However, the Iguanas did come back down to earth at the Temple. They do have the most Temple appearances of any team with 25, a major accomplishment that ultimately puts them ahead of the Barracudas, but at the same time, it's a stat born from their excellence in the games, not in the Temple itself. To put it simply, the Iguanas were terrible in the Temple. They went an impressively bad 4-21 on Temple runs, giving them a last place win percentage of 16%. Again, extra appearances can only count for so much when most of them are just embarrassing losses. It also turns out the Iguanas have the closest failed acquisition of an artifact. Words can't even do this justice. I mean, just look at this cinematography. This is tragic stuff. Had Jennifer been able to reach out just a little farther, she and Albert would have taken home Vivitar's innovative 44 PC camera. It just wasn't meant to be though. This is tough to watch, the type of pain you'd normally associate only with the Purple Parrots. And I guess that's not a bad place to leave off with the Iguanas, as it was Temple failures like this one that keeps the Iguanas below the top 2 teams. Those top 2 teams are pretty hard to separate. If you haven't figured it out already, Legends of the Hidden Temple is a game of inches and seconds, and because of that, there is a lot of parity here. Just a few wins separate the top teams from the rest of the pack in some categories, and that's even more evident when it comes to deciding which team was truly number 1. It's close. Really close, but in the end, the 2nd place team is the Silver Snakes.
The Silver Snakes!
The Silver Snakes are the villains of the show. Now, I say that with a lot of confidence, as if that were just a fact. In reality, the Silver Snakes are just like every other team, but for some reason, they just seemed to carry this sinister sense that makes me want to root against them, and I doubt I'm alone on that. If you're a Snakes fan, then I'm guessing you also like the Yankees, or the Patriots, or Real Madrid, teams that are often referred to as evil empires that most other fan bases can't stand. But all of these teams have one thing in common: they win. A lot. The Silver Snakes advanced from the moat 88 times, leaving just 32 episodes in which they were eliminated in the first round. That ties them for 2nd best with a win rate of 73%. In a similar fashion to the Red Jaguars, the Snakes struggled at the steps of knowledge despite their top-tier appearance numbers. A record of 40-48 for a win percentage of 45% is only good enough for 5th place, and acts as a real blemish on the Snakes' overall legacy. The Silver Snakes didn't set the world on fire in the games either, with a middling record of 68-52 in their 120 games played. But even with all those losses, the Snakes still managed to advance to the Temple 21 times, the 3rd most by any team. It was at Olmec's Temple where the Snakes really made their money. Silver pairs completed the Temple 8 times in those 21 runs, which gives them the highest completion percentage of any team with 38%. They also made it to the Artifact the most of any team with an Artifact acquisition percentage of 62%. The Silver Snakes established their Temple run superiority literally on day 1. That's because the Silver Snakes won the grand prize in the first episode of Legends to complete production, Galileo's Cannonball. We gotta take a look at this run. Because it was the first episode, it makes sense that this run used Temple Layout 1, and the artifact was located all the way in the back in Area 8. Alright, here we go. Jennifer runs into the temple first. Yes, her name is Jennifer too, just like the Orange Iguana that couldn't grab the blue pearl. She stays low early on, but is forced to give up her pendant when she encounters a temple guard in the throne room. And because production wasn't asleep like they were for Bobby's run, she actually comes across a locked door and is forced to go up where another temple guard appears and pulls her from the temple. At this point, our boy Jammin' John
Yeah, alright.
heads into the temple with 1 minute and 58 seconds left on the clock. Right away, you can tell that John means business. I mean, look at the way he just goes flying into the pit with little care for his health or well-being. He cruises through the path Jennifer left for him until he arrives at the Shrine of the Silver Monkey.
The Shrine of the Silver Monkey.
The shrine is one of the most well-known icons from the show, and that's probably because it ended a whole lot of runs. Which is weird, because all you have to do is put together a straightforward 3-piece puzzle. Even John can't figure out what to do at first until Kirk Fogg yells the immortal words,
Put the monkey together.
From there, it's smooth sailing until he grabs the cannonball with 44 seconds left, unlocking the doors and removing the remaining temple guard. John labors his way through the temple, and as the clock winds down, the crowd gets into it and starts counting down with the clock. John nearly blows the run by fumbling the cannonball with almost no time left, but he recovers and makes it through the gate with just a single second left on the clock. A photo finish on the very first run in Legends history. Even if I don't want to admit it, the Silver Snakes deserve respect. They have their faults, that's for sure, but their incredible stats in the temple are good enough for them to place second, one place below the best team in the show's history.
The Green Monkeys!
To absolutely no one's surprise, the Green Monkeys are the most successful team in Legends of the Hidden Temple. They are the popular choice for favorite team, as most episodes showcase the Green Monkeys excelling at least one phase of the game, and therefore they are the team that usually stands out when somebody first starts watching the show. They mirrored the Silver Snakes' performance at the moat, as they posted the exact same record of 88 and 32. The Green Monkeys were the most successful team at the Steps of Knowledge, as they turned their 88 moat victories into a record of 48 and 40 at the steps. That 55% step success rate was good enough to put the Monkeys on top by a single %. So real quick, that's already second place at the moat and first at the steps. At the games, well, there was just more success to be had, as the Monkeys managed a third best win percentage of 58%. And that 58% is coming out of a massive 144 games played, which is way more than the rest of the teams.
Those wins
earned them a first place 56 pendants, as well as 24 trips to Olmec's temple. At the temple, the Monkeys matched the Silver Snakes' total of 8 grand prize wins. The Monkeys brought it all home. The Veriflex Airwalker skateboard, the Nico Scorpion, cruises, trips to resorts, and of course, the holy grail of 90s kids game show prizes, a week at Space Camp.
You'll both be going to space camp!
And yes, the Silver Snakes did win just as much at the temple and actually had a better percentage, but the Green Monkeys were just too strong in the other phases for that to keep them out of the top spot, even with the temple stats being more important. The Green Monkeys are truly the best team when you consider all 4 phases of the show. Much of this success comes down to what the Green Monkeys did in the show's 3rd season. The Monkeys mauled the moat, going 31 and 9 on the season. They advanced from 26 of their 31 steps appearances, a huge percentage even for the Green Monkeys, who have always dominated the mental portion of the show. From there, they went on to obliterate the competition at the games, winning a bonkers total of 33 pendants of life. For comparison, the next best that season was 17 by the Orange Iguanas. The Monkeys went to the temple a record 15 times in season 3, which amounts to more than a third of the season's total episodes. The team's 4 grand prize wins was at least double what every other team could muster that season. Season 3 of Legends simply belongs to the Green Monkeys, as does the title of Best Team in Legends of the Hidden Temple history. Thank you for watching this video. If you made it this far in the video, then maybe consider hitting the like button or subscribing. I'd really appreciate it. Videos should be coming out faster than they have been lately, and I'm thinking that other Nick Gas shows could serve as a topic for some future videos. But again, I just want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.